Hello, friends, and welcome back to more stories about entitled people. People don't quit jobs, they quit managers. And this isn't just an anecdote. We reveal the details in our first story. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Threaten my job when I'm already quitting? Have fun with no workers. I work at a well-known huge grocery store in the bakery/deli. I've been in the general area now for 3 years, been in management, and recently stepped down this year to focus on college. In early July, I turned in my letter of resignation, letting them know that August 13th would be my last day. It's now about mid-July, and we've got an audit going on. Basically, everything has to be perfect. They ask you questions about your job, everything has to be on code, etc. Up until this point, we've been having an issue with staffing because instead of hiring employees full-time, they hire everyone part-time. I am the only full-time employee in my department. Because of this, there's never enough people to work, and they'll schedule 4 people working 3 or 4 hour shifts one night, and then the next, one person will be closing alone the entire night, usually me. I'm fine with that. I enjoy working alone, but this night was extra stressful with all the extra work I had to do because of the audit. I was all alone the night in question and working a shorter shift than usual. We tend to close the deli around 8 p.m. and have 2 hours to clean up. I was scheduled till 8:30 and spoke to my managers about it and got permission to close at 5 so I could take a lunch break and have 2 hours to close up. My managers also said that I'd be sent someone around 7:30 to help me close on time. Around 7 p.m., a woman comes up to the meat slicers asking for some sliced meat. I tell her I'm sorry, but we're closed for the night. She complains at me for a moment, complaining that she comes here every other night and we're always open, and I explain to her that we're low on staffing and I've already cleaned the slicers for the night, and she leaves. About 5 to 10 minutes later, my assistant manager walks up and asks me what the problem was. She'd gone to management and demanded we slice the meat. I explained the situation, and his response was to berate me for closing the deli down early and tell me to help her and just clean it again. Just stop being difficult, is what he said. After slicing some of her meat, we ended up being out of a different kind, and she walked out of the store, leaving everything behind. And meaning I had created more cleaning for nothing. I was PO'd. I took a walk to cool down and went to find my buddy, who was supposed to come over at 7:30, and ask when he was coming over. When I found him, he told me he wouldn't be able to come over because the assistant manager had come over and given him a long list of stuff to do for the rest of the night. That pissed me off even more. I found the assistant manager and was like, dude, and I reiterated that I was leaving at 8:30 p.m. and needed assistance, and he told me once again, stop being difficult and just get it all done. I told him there was no way I was getting it done in time and said that my schedule says I leave at 8:30, so I'm leaving at 8:30 regardless of how much is left to do. I guess he hadn't gotten the memo that I was quitting soon, so in response, he tells me that if I can't do my job well enough, maybe I should start looking for another job. That was my breaking point. After 3 years of working with crappy management and their backward ways, I decided I didn't need to do it anymore. I told him okay, found some of my favorite coworkers and told them goodbye, and it was nice working with them, and walked out. Haven't gone back since. They failed their audit. 6 other employees in my general area quit shortly after, due to most of them traveling out of state for college. The rest are planning on leaving as well. As far as I know, the entire area is effed up. Hope the manager got his butt chewed out. I've reported some of the managers there for serious issues, telling me they were too busy to help women whose lives were being threatened in the store, retaliation, threatening to fire people if they didn't work overtime, causing someone to lose Medicare and ration their insulin and be hospitalized for a few weeks, and they never went anywhere. F that place. If he can't staff his business with enough people to get the job done, then he should start looking for a new job. And our second story. My great-grandmother learned how to repair her car after her husband tried to force her to stay home. My great-grandma was born in the late 1920s, so when she got pregnant outside of wedlock, her family forced her to marry my great-grandfather, which really sucked for her because she really didn't like him. She and my great-grandpa pretty much never got along. They were always fighting and would constantly do petty things to each other. Like my great-grandma putting a piece of raw meat on 2 slices of bread when my grandpa refused to eat what she'd made and demanded she make him a sandwich. But my great-grandpa could also be really controlling. He refused to let my great-grandma leave the house to do her own errands or have any form of life. If she wasn't leaving to go to work or doing stuff specifically for or with him, she wasn't allowed to leave. To ensure this, he'd take essential parts out of her car when he left for work. He'd take the parts with him and always assumed he had her beat. Well, my great-grandma was a feisty woman who wasn't about to put up with that, so she got a book on basic mechanics to learn how to put her engine back together. She would then go buy parts to her car that my grandpa would regularly take out because he wasn't a mechanic or anything, so it was always small parts that would be easy to take out and put back in if you knew what you were doing. After he'd leave for work, she'd wait a bit to make sure he wasn't coming back for anything, then she'd get the parts. To make sure my great-grandpa didn't know what she was doing, she hid all the parts in things like flower pots and containers of birdseed that he never messed with. She'd put the part in her car, go to town, do whatever, then would take the part back out and re-hide it before my great-grandpa got home. As far as I know, he never figured out what she was doing. He just smugly believed that he had her completely stranded at home, all the while she was out on the town living her own life. One final petty thing she did after he died was to place a whole bunch of plants in his room. They had separate bedrooms since it was custom and they hated each other. She had all kinds of plants in there that he had hated and would never let her keep. She loved those plants and took great care of them until she couldn't anymore. We've tried to put some of those flowers on her grave now that she's passed. If I remember correctly, she's not placed near my grandfather. Love how petty my great-grandma could be. It was a different time back then. Sometimes divorce wasn't an option. Good on your great-grandma for being a bad A and doing her own thing. And our next story. Entitled dad and his daughter went into our garden to steal tomatoes. I was in elementary school when this happened, so my memory could be fuzzy. There was a house to the left that was being rented out by the grandson of the builder and designer of the home. A family that lived all the way across the state moved in. I assumed that they wanted to get away from the big city and settle down in a small town. They had a 3-year-old daughter that we'll call Gia. They allowed my sister and I to play with the little girl. The first day we had a blast, and I was looking forward to playing with her again. The second time she came over, she wanted to hold my old English bantam. I let her explore the chicken coop and let her pet and hold her last time. My mom caught us and I got in trouble. All she wanted to do was pick up chickens, and when she would drop it or if it would somehow escape, she'd chase it down. I was trying to distract her from the chicken. It worked because she found another distraction. She broke at least 3 flower pots. My mom was supervising the whole time and she didn't like that she did that. We sent her home and that was the last time she was invited over. Despite what she did, we were not going to hold it against the neighbors. We didn't know it at the time, but it was a big red flag. My mom had always wanted a garden. Ever since I could remember, she had a garden with every single vegetable you could think of. I loved being in the garden and playing near the garden as a kid. One day, when my mom was outside picking tomatoes, she noticed that the tomatoes were missing. One day, when my mom was having a cup of coffee, she caught the dad and his daughter sneaking into the garden with a bucket. When she confronted them about it, he was trying to claim that he just wanted to show his daughter the garden. I don't know where you're from, but where I'm from, parents don't go into people's gardens multiple times a week with their kids. I guess he was just trying to claim he was teaching his daughter about plants. The only thing he taught her was how to steal. After about 1.5 years, they decided to make their own garden and place it right next to the fence in an area where we could always see. Every time they would run into each other, he would try to boast about how well the garden was doing, what they're planting, etc. One day, he threatened to call animal control on my dogs because they bark 24/7. There's a wooded area behind our house. The dogs are responsible for protecting the chickens from raccoons, possums, foxes, and gosh knows what else could be in there. The next day, my mom was probably giving the dogs water. He was tending the garden and turned to my mom and said, "This is where our zucchini plants are going to go." After 1.5 years, their garden failed miserably. At this point, they had 3 kids. He started taking all 3 of his kids to steal more tomatoes. My mom would confront him again and again, but he would blame his children. He and his wife were horrible parents. As soon as the kids could walk, they were allowed to run around the neighborhood naked, climb the neighbors' trees, and scream bloody murder. When she had her fourth child, she would let it sit outside in a high chair for hours in the heat while she sat inside doing gosh knows what. Things only got worse. They'd end up stealing other vegetables until eventually my mom lost faith in her garden. Within 3 years, it went from being a diverse vegetable utopia to a patch of weeds taller than me. For whatever reason, my mom would not call the police or CPS or do anything. She was never the type of person to stand up for herself, but when she does, she'd feel guilty about it. The other neighbors have threatened to call CPS, but they never did. They eventually got evicted, and they were forced to pay thousands of dollars worth of damages. What happened to the house is a story in of itself. Let's just say the damages were so bad, you'd think the house was ransacked. I hate garden thieves. Most gardeners will happily share extras with neighbors. People just need to ask. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.